Hello and welcome to this episode of the Cloud Native Trainer with me, Mike Kelly. Today we're going to look at the Hugo Static Site Generator and how we can use it to host a blog or a website on GitHub Pages. So what is Hugo? Hugo is a static site generator, and by that I mean it is a tool written in Go which takes a bunch of Markdown files and images, and when run with the tool will generate a HTML website which we can then host using something like GitHub Pages. It's built for speed. It's certainly much faster than some of its competitors such as Jekyll. It has over 300 themes available, so when you're getting started, you can just pick a theme, add your content, push it to GitHub Pages, and you're good to go. I mentioned it's written in Go. Go's a really good language for building these kind of tools. It's used in Google and is also used for writing the likes of Terraform. And if you want to know more about Hugo, you can go to gohugo.io. So let's have a quick look at the kind of templates that are available. You can see there's quite a variety in content, from general websites to portfolios to design agency sites. All of these are currently available for free. And one of my favorites is Lotus Docs, which is great for hosting doc sites. And I've used it on my last project. Okay, so what are we going to cover today? First off, we're going to look at what you're going to need to complete this course. We're going to then install the software. We'll create the website, obviously the most important part. We'll install another theme, something a bit more modern than the default. And then ultimately we will host the site on GitHub Pages. So what do you need to complete this course? You're going to need Git, the version control software. You'll need a PowerShell or Linux terminal. With regards to the PowerShell, that's not the Windows PowerShell, which comes bundled with Windows 10 and 11, but rather PowerShell 7, which is built on .NET Core, which is cross-platform. It'll also help if you've got Visual Studio Code. You're going to need to install Go because Hugo ultimately runs on Go. You're going to need a GitHub account. This is so that we can use GitHub Pages. And last but no means least, you're going to need to install Hugo. And also .sass, which is a SAS provider or a CSS transcompiler, which Hugo makes use of. So installing the prerequisites. So we've got Git. I've got another course on this, so I'll put the link up above. And if you just want to skip straight to the easiest way of doing it on Windows, you can go to gitforwindows.org. If you're using a Mac, then Git comes bundled with the terminal. The first time you use it, it will install it. Then for PowerShell or Linux terminal, you don't need to install a new terminal for Linux. You can just use it. But if you're on a Windows system and you're currently using Windows PowerShell, then you will need to install PowerShell 7. That can be done using winget. So if you do winget install --ID Microsoft.PowerShell --source winget, that will install the latest stable version, and if you want to use the preview one, you can use the command below. So just make sure you're not using the Windows PowerShell. Then there's VS Code, which is available at code.visualstudio.com. There's Go itself. If you go to go.dev/doc/install, full instructions and the binaries to install are available there. I won't be covering that in detail here. And then you're going to need a GitHub account. So head on over to github.com if you don't already have one. Sign up for GitHub and then you'll be ready to go. So to install Hugo, I would recommend on Windows to use the Chocolatey Package Manager, and then it's as simple as choco install Hugo extended. You can find Chocolatey at the link below, and I'll put that in the description as well if you want to follow it. If you want to use a package manager on macOS, then I recommend Brew. If you go to docs.brew.sh/installation, you can get full details on how to install that. But once it's installed, it's as simple as doing brew install Hugo to install Hugo. Then on Dartsas, again, assuming that we've got the Chocolatey package manager installed, it's just choco install sas. And on macOS with Brew, it's brew install sas/sas/sas. Okay, now let's get on with creating the website. Okay, let's verify that Hugo is installed on our system and some of the other bits. No. So, in our PowerShell terminal, if we type in Hugo version, you can see we've got Hugo 0.123.7, which is good. Okay. So for our Hugo site, we're going to need a directory. So I'm going to move into my source directory and specifically the repos folder where I keep all of my Git repos. I'm going to now create a new site using the Hugo new site command. And I'm going to call this quick start. We can now change into that directory. And we're now going to initialize a Git repository so that when we install our theme, we can use the Git submodule feature to add the theme directly from GitHub. So let's do that now with a Git init. And that, of course, turns the current directory into a Git repository. Okay, now I'm going to use Git submodule to add one of the default themes. So this is Anakak. I've probably absolutely butchered the name of that, but let's go with it. So here we go. We've got the Git submodule add, then the URL for GitHub, and specifically the themes repository, and then the name of the theme. So let's hit enter. Okay, that's now been cloned. And what we're going to need to do now is update our Hugo toml file, which is basically where the settings are, to tell it that we want to set the theme to Anak. So let's do that. And we can do that from the command line. And I'm going to write that into the hugo.toml file. Okay, and let's just have a look at that in code. Trust everyone. Let's go to our Hugo toml, and we can see that we've written the theme into the file. So that's all ready to go. So back to the terminal, and we're going to run Hugo server, which will start the site up. So we can't find the module for the theme, right? Let's see what's up with that. Okay, so where were we? So the issue specifically with why the site wouldn't start when we did Hugo server. As you can see, it's telling us that it can't find the module, and it's basically I've got the wrong name. We come back into the Git modules, we can see that actually the module is anac. We copy that, come back to the theme.toml, sorry, the hugo.toml, and you can see I have missed a letter. So missing an N, and as simple as that. If we save that now and come back, we can do a Hugo server, hit enter, and we can see that the site has started and is now available on localhost. So let's click to follow that link. We move the site over here. We can see we have a very empty site. So what's next? Let's add some content. Before we add the content, let's stop the site. And what we'll do is add a quick post using the Hugo new content command. Now we want this to go into our posts folder on the site, and we need to give it a name. So let's just go with the classic hello world. And it needs to be a markdown file, so that's an MD. So let's enter. And let's go and have a look to see what has been created for us. So if we close down this themes folder, go to content, and then the content posts, because obviously I've done that wrong. Let's delete that folder. And go back and fix this. Put in the space that was missing. And hit enter. We can now see that we've got a post folder with hello world. And in addition to just creating the file, we've also got this front matter, which has some tags, which Hugo is aware of. So it's the title and the date of publication, and then whether or not our file is draft or not. So by default, it is set to true. And when we want to publish this and make it live, then we can either remove this or set it to false. So now we have a file. It's a regular Markdown file, so we can just add normal Markdown content. So let's do that. So if I do hello world, and I might want this as a H1, so I can either do the double underline, or if we don't like that, there's the alternative, just hash or pound symbol, depending on where you are in the world. And then we can start typing some text. So this is bold text. Bold in Markdown is 2 stars. And if we want to italicize or emphasize some text, we can say this is italics. And we just put additional headings in, so second level header, third level, basically anything you can do inside of a Markdown file, you can now do on our website, which makes for quite a quick authoring experience. So let's save that. Let's go and do Hugo server again. Go back to our site. We can go to posts. Hello world. Except there's nothing here. And the reason why there's nothing here is because we've not told it to build the drafts. So let's go back, do Hugo Sorry, let's go back to VS Code. Control C. Do Hugo server -d, or we could also do -- build drafts. Does the same thing. Hit enter. And now when we go to the site, here's our posts. And we can even see it on the home page with a link. Hit read more. And what we can see here is that the front matter has rendered the hello world, and then we've put a second H1 in there, which we could get rid of. And we can see the rest of the Markdown has been converted to HTML, which is great. Okay, so I've gone away now and added some more example posts just to give us a better idea of how the site would work with some actual real content and how the theme works. So I've just been using the Hugo new content command, giving it the path that I want to write the new post to, which in this case is the post folder, and then the name of the file. So you can see I've done one for AWS, Azure, Git, and containers and a few others. So now that we've got all of that, if we go to Hugo server, build drafts, and hit enter, we'll now get the site up and running again. So we can now see it looks a lot better. We can see recent posts. We can click on that individual post. We can see we've got some sample content here, which is fully formatted with Markdown. We've got our header 1, header 2, header 3. So that structure's all looking good. If we go to the posts section, we can see all the posts that we've got. And then we go back to the home page. We can see there's all posts linked there as well, but also it's got these smaller titles which we can click on for some of the older content. So all starting to look a lot better. Now, one problem with our current site is things like my new Hugo site isn't a great name for a blog or a website. So how do we change that? Well, that's quite simple. If we go back to hugo.toml, we can see that we've got this title here. So if we go and change that to something, my awesome blog, for example, and hit save, you can see that Hugo has detected a file change and has rebuilt the site without us having to stop and restart the site. So if we go back to our web browser, we can see the title in the tabs changed, in the header link it's changed, and also the full name of the website. So now we have a fully working website. We can add as much content as we want and start changing how it looks and feels should we wish to as well. But I think we've got a good basis here now to demonstrate how switching themes would work, and the content and how all that changes. So let's move on to that. Okay, let's install a theme. Okay, so let's say we want to change the theme on our site. Let's make this a little bit easier by running VS Code. Let's install a theme browser side by side. We'll go and have a look for the Hugo theme site. Look at the complete list, and we just want to change to another one. So let's pick the first one on the list, so paper mod. Scroll down here, we can see the Anak theme, which is the default that we're already using, but we want something that's a bit different. So you see it's quite a minimal looking theme. Let's go to download, which should take us to the GitHub documentation. And let's see, let's have a look. Paper mod installation, let's click on that. So Git submodule. So this is what we did for the first theme. Let's click on that. And let's just copy that code. Let's come over here. Let's stop the site for a minute. Copy that in. Enter. Okay. And then it's telling us to run the Git submodule update just to make sure that everything is okay. So now that we've done that, we can go and to the hugo.toml. We can change that to paper mod. Which is a little bit different from what they're listing here. But let's see if that works. So if we go to Hugo server build drafts, what does our website now look like? Well, look, totally new theme. Got a light and a dark mode. That looks a lot more modern for me. Have a look at the individual posts. All looking good. So as easy as that to switch the theme and totally change the look and feel of our website. So should you wish to do any other themes, again, we can go to Hugo Themes, have a look at the complete list, and then go through them. And each of them have documentation on how to install them. One caveat I should say is that not all the themes work in exactly the same way. Some might be slightly older, some are newer, some are done as Hugo modules, some as Git submodules. You know, there's numerous ways of installing them. I find the easiest way to do it is with the Git submodule and the approach that we've taken today. Okay, all right. Now we should start looking at how to actually host this site for free on GitHub Pages. Okay, so now we're going to host our site on GitHub Pages. There's a couple of things we need to do. The first thing we need to do is to log on to github.com. And once there, we can create a new public repository with a specific format. So it needs to be username.github.io. And the username needs to match the username of our GitHub account. So in this instance, this is Mike Kelly. So we come over to repositories. Let's create a new repository. It's going to be this is Mike Kelly. Make sure I've spelled that right. .github.io. As you can see, we are missing an L, but it needs to match exactly. So this is mikekelly.github.io. That's good. So it needs to be public in order to use the free GitHub Pages offering. But once we've done that, we're all good and we can hit create repository. Next, we need to link the repository or the Git repository that we've got locally to our remote. So the first thing we're going to have to do is actually log into Git, and we can do that using the Git credentials manager. So Git credential manager. GitHub and login. That should then open our browser and allow us to sign in using the browser. So let's click on the button. You'll get a message that says authentication proceeded, and you can now close the tab. Now, if we take the command to push an existing repository from the command line, hit copy. Then need to select an account if you've got multiple. And the code has now been pushed up. And then if we refresh, we can see all of our content is now been added. And if we take this in the browser, it will point at our website. Now, our website's not currently working, so there's a couple of extra steps that we need to take. Okay, so to get this to work properly, we need to go back to our repository, go to Settings, Pages, and then Build and Deployment, we need to change the source from Deploy from a branch to GitHub Actions. Now, GitHub Actions needs to look for a GitHub Actions file. So if we come back to our repository, and we're going to add a new folder called GitHub. Now, this is a dot folder, so .github. And then within there, we'll create another folder called Workflows. And then we're going to add a hugo.yaml file. And the contents of this are going to be available. I'll put a link in the description below. So I've got a gist, and if we just click on that, the raw, copy and paste this. So the link to this will be below. You can also find it on the Hugo main website in their instructions. Okay, so that's now all saved. We need to then push that up to GitHub. So let's do git add, git commit, GitHub Actions. Okay, once we've done the commit, then we need to push. Make sure all the changes are there. We can now see the workflow file, to actions. And we can see our deploy Hugo site to pages, which is the name that we've given in the hugo.yaml. And we can see that the pipeline is now running. The pipeline was triggered via a push, which we did when we made the changes to the pipeline. We can also run the pipeline manually. So if we go to the workflow and then look at run workflow, hit run workflow, that will kick up another run of the pipeline. That's now started. We can see that the previous one is finished. So let's tidy that up and delete the workflow run to make sure it's not confusing. Okay, so we can see that our deploy Hugo sites pages has worked. We now come up to our page and refresh. You can see our website. Now there is one problem here, and that is all of our pages are in draft. So if we come back to our website, we want to delete this draft is true on these pages, which has the effect of publishing them. Save that. Git add. Git commit. No. Publishing posts. And then git push. Okay. And if we come back, you can see that our workflow is now running again. And once this is completed, we should have our posts actually published. Okay, just waiting on the deployment. The build's been successful. Deployment's now in progress. And complete. Go back to our blog, and we appear to only have one page. What's going on there? And now I've spotted the mistake. I've not done save all. Let's try that again. So this is a good way of showing you the typical workflow for using Hugo. So you can make changes, view them locally using the Hugo server, and then when you're happy with the content, if you push them up to Git or GitHub in this instance, this will trigger our GitHub Actions pipeline, which will then deploy the changes into production. Now we see the entire website. Fully working with light and dark mode and publicly available.